Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at a topic that's, well, literally built into every game we watch, but we almost never stop to actually think about it: the score. Specifically, we're going to look at how the volume, the math, and the mechanics of keeping score can create some of the most intense, unforgettable, and frankly, baffling drama in human history. We're contrasting two completely different ends of the scoring spectrum today. We'll kick things off with the pure, chaotic volume of a historic soccer match, and then we'll unravel the centuries-old mystery of a sport where the numbers seem to make absolutely zero mathematical sense. 10. I just want you to sit with that number for a second. 10. In professional soccer, a sport where, let's be real, a single goal is celebrated like a moon landing, and where matches routinely end 0-0, 10 is an absurd, almost mythical number. It's totally off the charts. But this isn't just a random stat. This is the unbelievable, absolutely breathless total number of goals scored in a single chaotic match at the 2026 World Cup. Section 1, a historic World Cup thriller, the 2026 playoff. To really grasp the chaos of this Miami match between France and England, you just have to look at the frantic pace. Now, this was the third-place playoff. Historically, the third-place match is kind of seen as a glorified friendly. The teams are usually heartbroken from losing their semifinals, they're exhausted, and honestly, they're usually just ready to pack up and go home. But inside Hard Rock Stadium, this was different. This was a thrilling, record-breaking battle of wills. England stormed right out of the gates. By the 37th minute, Bukayo Saka scored to put England up 3-0, and they took this commanding 4-0 lead into halftime. Crazy, right? But then, France absolutely roared back. In the 67th minute, Kylian Mbappe lashed home a left-footed shot to make it a terrifying 4-3. I mean, the tension was just suffocating. Then, fast forward to the 87th minute, Saka secures a legendary hat trick from the penalty spot. And finally, in the 90th minute, Jude Bellingham dances through a completely exhausted French defense to seal an unprecedented 6-4 victory. That was his 7th goal of the tournament, by the way. And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer thrill of this high-scoring anomaly. Because amidst all that wild English celebration, history was quietly being made on the other side of the pitch. During this crazy shootout, Kylian Mbappe didn't just score twice to keep France in the game. No, those goals pushed him to the absolute top of the mountain. In this single chaotic playoff, Mbappe officially became the all-time top scorer in World Cup history. No small feat, right? I absolutely love this quote from the live commentary of the match. It goes, "The game that means nothing was one of the highlights of the tournament, with records falling over the place." Hit the nail on the head, for sure. It just perfectly captures the adrenaline of that afternoon. Actually, after the final whistle blew on this 10-goal epic, rival managers Thomas Tuchel and Didier Deschamps, they didn't even do the formal handshake thing. They just shared this smiling, exhausted hug. They knew right then and there they had just been part of something truly ridiculous. Section 2, the 10-goal chaos. Let's break down the action. So what makes that World Cup match so uniquely wild is the actual simplicity of soccer's scoring system. It's a straightforward one-for-one volume system. You put one ball in the net, you get exactly 1 point. There are no style points, there are no multipliers. You literally just add them up. And because of this, massive momentum swings are incredibly rare, and frankly, pretty visually jarring when they do happen. A 10-goal tally simply means the fundamental objective of the sport was successfully executed 10 separate times. Pretty logical, right? But what if a sports scoring system wasn't simple at all? I want you to think about this for a moment. We readily accept soccer's 1+1 logic. So why on earth do we blindly accept a sport like tennis where the numbers seem to make absolutely no mathematical sense at all? A sport where winning your first point gives you 15, your second gives you 30, and your third gives you 40? Like, what is going on there? Section 3, the mystery of tennis scoring, decoding the tally. All right, we are stepping away from that sun-drenched pitch in Miami and venturing deep into the history books. Now, what's really interesting about this progression is the sheer jump in logic. Let's lay it out. 0 is called love. 1 point gets you 15, 2 points gets you 30, 3 points gets you 40, and 4 points wins you the game. These calls are completely divorced from their actual numerical point value. I mean, you haven't scored 15 times. You've literally just scored once. It's this weird auditory code that players and fans just learn by rote without ever really stopping to question the math. And you know what? The complications don't stop at the numbers. If both players manage to reach 3 points, the score isn't called 40-all. It suddenly becomes deuce. And at this stage, standard advantage scoring kicks in. To win the game from a tie, one player actually has to get 2 points ahead. Winning that first point gives you the advantage. But if you lose the very next point, bam, you're dragged right back to deuce. Mechanically, it's quite complex, but honestly, it's an absolutely brilliant mechanism for building tension. Section 4, Clocks, Coins, and Love, Unraveling the History. To figure out where this highly eccentric numerical journey actually came from, we have to go way back. We're talking references from a 1435 ballad by a French duke named Charles d'Orleans and a Latin text from 1522. We really have to look at two dominant theories for why we suddenly jump from 15 to 30. First up, there's the clock face theory. This one suggests that medieval scores were kept on a clock dial, moving a quarter hour for each point. So 15, 30, 45, and then 60 for the game. Eventually, the 45 was just shortened to 40 for ease of speaking. Sounds pretty elegant, right? Well, there's a catch. Clocks with minute hands weren't actually common until the pendulum escapement was invented way later, in 1690, long after tennis scores were firmly established. So what's the much more plausible explanation? The Carolingian monetary system. Back in medieval Europe, a base 60 monetary system was the standard. Spectators and players heavily wagered on these matches, so it is highly likely that the game's scoring was directly aligned with the exact physical coins they were gambling with. Fascinating, right? There's also another fun physical theory we should definitely touch on, the jeu de paume theory. Jeu de paume was sort of a French precursor to modern tennis. This theory claims that the serving player physically moved closer to the net in increments, first 15 feet, then another 15 feet, and finally 10 feet for the third point, which, if you add it up, gets you to the number 40. It's a great visual, it really is. But historians generally debunk this one. Why? Well, because there's ample evidence proving that medieval courts had absolutely zero standard length. I mean, you couldn't really base a universal scoring system on stepping measurements when literally every single court was a completely different size. So, the crucial point here is that while the exact numbering might stem from medieval gambling, what about love? Like, why on earth do we say love instead of zero? There are a few really fascinating historical theories here. The most famous one is that it comes from the French word l'œuf, which means the egg, simply because a zero visually looks like an egg. Pretty straightforward. Another theory points to the English phrase playing for love, which essentially meant playing purely for the love of the game, with zero monetary stakes involved. And finally, there's the Dutch word loef, which roughly translates to playing for honor or praise. Section 5, breaking down the match. Let's talk sets, tiebreaks, and modern tweaks. All right, so we've solved the ancient mysteries of individual game scoring. Let's move on and see how this all builds into a global modern sport. Because modern tennis is essentially designed like a set of Russian nesting dolls. It's just entirely modular. Step 1, you win points to take the game. Step 2, you win a sequence of games, usually 6 of them, and you gotta have a margin of 2 to take the set. Step 3, you win the majority of sets, either best of 3 or best of 5, to finally win the match. This compartmentalized structure is wild, because it means you can theoretically win way more total points than your opponent across the whole afternoon, but still completely lose the match if you don't win those points in the right clusters. But, even this classic structure isn't totally immune to modern tweaking. To prevent matches from just dragging on indefinitely, some innovations had to be made. Enter James Van Allen, the guy who created no-ad scoring. This is used a lot in doubles, and it simply means the first player to 4 points wins the game. No grueling 2-point margin needed at deuce, just boom, done. Similarly, the tiebreak set was widely adopted by major tournaments back in the 1970s. So instead of playing sets until someone magically leads by 2 whole games, a tiebreak game triggers at 6-6. And remarkably, get this, it was only recently, in 2022, that all 4 Grand Slams finally standardized their final set tiebreaks to trigger evenly at 6-6. Took them long enough. We've really covered some ground today, going from the beautifully blunt arithmetic of a 10-goal World Cup bloodbath all the way to the incredibly complex, base 60 coin wagering history of a tennis match. It really makes you appreciate the arbitrary, yet totally brilliant traditions of the games we love. So I'll leave you with this thought to take away. If you were handed a completely blank slate and asked to invent a brand new sport today, right now, how would you keep score? Would you use simple addition, or would you hide a secret history in the numbers? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the rules of the game.